Hey, welcome to our November 15th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, and we'll start with our roll call.
All right, Stiles.
Here.
Greene.
Here.
Durensky.
Here.
Osterman.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinner and Superintendent Amy Washington.
Okay, so we're going to review the agenda. Is there anything that we need to add? If not, then we'll go down and review the minutes. And so we'll sort of run through it quickly, page by page. Does anybody have any changes for the first page? Second page. Third page. Fourth page. Fifth page. And then the last one, the sixth one, just has a small amount on it. Okay, could we get a motion to approve the minutes of the October 11th meeting?
I move we approve the minutes from
I
last
second.
meeting.
Great, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is that okay, Judy?
Okay.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to communications. Do we have any communications? None, okay. And then, Carmen, do you have a report from council?
I do not have a report from council prepared.
Okay. Anything you want to make us aware of, or no?
Not currently.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to citizens' comments. And so this is the area for anybody wanting to say anything that doesn't have anything to do with what we're going to have in another public hearing. And when you come to the podium, whether it's for the citizens' comments or the public hearing, please introduce yourself, and please do come to the podium and speak. So if we don't have any citizens' comments, then we'll go on to our next, which is our preliminary PUD, and Denise.
Okay. I want to start off first by letting you know that I've made a change from my report that you have, and that is because on page 6 and 7 of the report, there is a table that references the different types of uses that you might have, and then what would be the accompanying underlying zoning. And there isn't anything in that table that actually reflects B1. But then if you go to the PUD language, it states that any permitted uses by right or conditional approval in any zoning district may be permitted in a PUD as long as you meet the qualifying conditions. So based on that, I had to look at it again, and really out of the uses that Allison chose in her schedule of uses that's also in your packet, it might be Exhibit C maybe, there's really only 5 uses because I-1 has always been the underlying zoning. And then she's adding uses from B2. She's not interested in any of the automotive, but what was interesting when I looked at the I-1, it allows it in I-1 already. So it really came down to there's 5 uses in B1 that she wants to add. So what I'm talking about is we'd have an I-1 and a B2 underlying zoning with a 5 uses addition to that are allowed in B1 but aren't in I1 or B2. And those 5 uses are, Judy, do you have the?
I have it right here.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay. Art galleries, museums, and similar cultural facilities, assembly and performance halls, community centers or senior centers, cultural buildings, and bicycle sales, rental, and repair. So of those 5, you might want to hone in to see if you have any issues with those 5 being added. And I'll go ahead now into the regular part of my report. In 2019, the previous owners of Millworks came before the Planning Commission with a preliminary plan for a PUD. And it was, as I said in my report, it was pretty ambitious. They were going to have some co-housing types of thing where they would have residential above with like art studios below. And they were wanting to do the museum, like a children's museum, and food preparation and different things like that. And with that, then it goes to council for approval of the rezoning, and that happens in the preliminary process, which I find a bit unusual because what has happened, and this is the case that happened out on the land south of town, is you get a PUD designation, and then if they never come back for the final, it just is there. If no one comes back and changes it or reverts it back to what it originally was, it just still has this PUD zoning, but you don't know what the underlying is for it. Knowing that this has been sitting there since 2019 with no underlying zoning, when Allison has come to me for different clients or tenants, we've always had to follow the I-1. And she would like to be able to expand that a little bit. So I said, when I contacted her, I said, we have this shell, this PUD shell with nothing underlying. Do you want to keep that, or do you want us for me to go to council and have it reverted back to I-1? And she said she'd like to go with the PUD, so that's why she's here tonight. Okay, for this underlying zoning of B2, I-1, and the sprinkling of a few uses out of B1, which is Central Business District. So this, is 4.1544 acres consisting of 4 parcels. There's 2 parcels, very small parcels that edge the whole border along the entire property of the Little Miami Scenic Trail. And then there's 3 others. There are 2 others. There's a 1 acre, which right now has a small building on it and has some gravel parking area. The rest, the main property, is the 2.997 acres, and there's a total of 11 buildings on the entire property. We have both residential and non-residential PUDs, and this is a non-residential PUD. And so in considering the PUD request, the Planning Commission needs to find that the proposed development meets 8 general standards, but only those that apply to a non-residential PUD, obviously. So it is staff's opinion that the 8 general standards are met, and that was, and I can go through those, that the PUD complies with the standards, conditions, and requirements of this chapter. These buildings are grandfathered in, so the setbacks may not be what we require today, but if there was any future development, then you would have to follow the current guidelines for today's, what's in the requirement for today. And then that it meets the intent and purpose of this chapter, and it is, the purpose of a PUD is to allow for more creative development, and this designation provides a blended mix of uses. The proposed project needs to be compatible with adjacent uses of land. The uses are compatible given its previous designation as mixed-use industrial only. These additional uses are really, in my opinion, are not detrimental to the area. And then the proposed project will be consistent with health, safety, and welfare needs, yes. Granting the PUD rezoning will result in a recognizable and substantial benefit to ultimate users of the project and to the community. Again, yes, it has been in both the 2010 and the 2020 comp plan to consider expansion of the B1 North to encompass Millworks. The PUD, what's nice about the PUD, it gives us flexibility without having to rezone numerous properties between B1 currently and where this property is. You've got the lumber company, you've got a couple 2 residential houses there. We don't have to do that if we use this PUD designation, and we get the same result. We're getting a mix of retail, a little bit of an expansion of the Central Business District into Millworks through this PUD process.
Because the B1 would have to be contiguous.
Yes, yes.
Can't. Okay.
Right, so we would have to, I think the house, the brick house is still in B1, and then there's 2 residential houses after that, and the lumber company is I1. So you've got Yeah, so you have RC, it goes from B1 to RC, RC, I1, and then PUD. So this, we'd have to rezone all those other properties. And then the PUD will not result in any significant increase in the need for public services and facilities, and that staff doesn't see that it would need that. And then it will be consistent with the comp plan, which I've already said, what's applicable is you do redevelopment or infill locations should be favored over greenfield development. This is already an existing property and existing PUD. Natural features and resources should be preserved or at least conserved. It's really not applicable because there isn't any, she's not intending to build anything. It's really a use request. Future development or redevelopment shall strengthen the physical character of the village. If she does redevelop that, I'm sure that it would. We don't know at this point. And she is here to make a little presentation. Quality design, again, we have existing buildings. It really doesn't apply. Places are created with an integrated mix of uses that contribute to the village's identity and vitality, yes. Diverse housing choices, not applicable. There's no development planned. So places are connected and accessible throughout the community by transportation methods other than autos, and we have a little Miami Scenic Trail right there. And then the PUD's going to enhance the character within the area, yes. So then that brings us back to the qualifying conditions. Allison had 4 qualifying conditions. Staff agreed with 3 of hers and actually did not agree with one of them, but actually had one that she did not consider. So the ones that I saw was a complementary mix of land uses or housing, connectivity of open space with new or existing adjacent greenway or trail corridors, improvements to public streets or other public facilities that mitigate traffic or other development impacts, and she's going to be talking about that because of the improvements that she's already made, and removal or renovation of blighted building sites or contamination cleanup. And so, as I said again, she's going to give a short presentation on the work that they've done so far. As far as the size goes, typically PUDs contain a minimum of 5 acres, but this was already previously approved by council in 2019, so that's not a concern. Utilities, the Public Works Director doesn't have any issues there. Has met with Allison when she first purchased the property to talk about some of the problems with the stormwater and show her where our storm catch basins are, and she was able to do some stormwater mitigation to improve that. And then ownership, she is the owner, so that's not an issue. And again, it brings in the comp plan and vision. This is also not only in the 2010 and 2020 comp plan, but the 2012 vision study that was done for all of Miami Township. It also, it recognized this area as important, especially with, the central business district and any growth that there might be. Pedestrian accommodation, again, that's definitely with the bike trail. And they're actually creating a pathway between what will be the lumber company market eatery, I think it's already in place, and her property. So bicyclists will be able to park their bikes either in the bike racks at the lumber company market eatery, maybe go in there, or can go over to the Wise Brewery or baking company or the Tuck and Reds. So that's definitely an improvement. And then the others don't really apply because architecture, again, there's currently no plans to add any new buildings. Traffic, the majority of traffic uses the Walnut Street entrance, and there's a second access point off Fairfield Pike that will be enhanced at some point as a future parking area. And eligible districts, again, as I mentioned, any land is eligible for a PUD in our zoning code. And then that brings us then to the PUD requirements. So PUD requirements, minimum lot size and zoning requirements, those setbacks are already in place for the existing buildings, as I mentioned, so they're grandfathered in. Connectivity with the pathways from the Little Miami Scenic Trail. And then there isn't, the applicant, for modification of minimum requirements, the applicant hasn't requested any deviations from the minimum requirements in the zoning code. And density bonus, she's not asking for any density bonus, as this is a non-residential PUD. It's not a residential PUD. Lastly, the open space, at least 15% of the area of a PUD site shall be preserved as open space, and currently she has met that with the 1 acre lot to the north, and then there's some open space areas, green space areas around the other property. And so that's my report.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Denise before we ask Allison to do her presentation? Okay, then Allison, if you'd like to.
Let me just add, I have a number of questions, but I think they'd be best after your presentation and after we get
Okay.
into discussing.
Great.
I've taken some notes.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Allison Moody. I'm a partner in APR Investments, and we own Millworks. Thank you, Denise, for all your help throughout this whole process. We met with Denise really early on, and Josue too, to talk about what the village would like to see at Millworks, and it really aligned with what we'd like to see. We can start. As Denise explained, we're currently operating with an underlying I-1 zoning. We would like to add limited B2, really to mirror B1, and historically it was DeWine seed and other industrial uses. The purpose of the PUD is to protect the current use and the current industrial tenants, while also adding B2 zoning to welcome a wider array of businesses. This is coming at a really good time for us. Enviroflight is leaving. They're our largest tenant. They occupy 5 buildings and about 25,000 square feet. Since purchasing the property last year, we've spent over $200,000 in capital improvements. We have done this with the intention of making the property more accessible, visible, and safe for the general public and our tenants. Our parking lot, we paved the parking lot about 40,000 square feet. We also added a lot to the drainage system, the stormwater system, and in this project, we connected the parking lot to the bike trail with a walking path. Next. Up there's our walking path. Before it was inaccessible, it was overgrown, there was a fence right there, and now there's gravel. We added bike racks, signage, we had it painted. It's really worked out. A lot of people use it now to connect, from the parking lot to the bike trail. Before, people would have to walk around the north end, which is where our industrial tenants are, so that's really not a safe place for people to be walking around. We've had a lot of positive feedback on this. We added lighting to make the area safe at night. We painted some buildings that desperately needed it. We added a new monument sign. The other one was in deterioration. We've also added directional signs to help people get to the property. We improved the public restrooms, the common use restrooms, which we have now opened up during public events like Porch Fest and Street Fair. So, clean bathrooms are always nice to have around. We've cleaned up a lot of the landscaping like anywhere else in town. The landscaping just kind of gets overgrown. So that is a constant maintenance thing for us. We are currently replacing 26 skylights in 2 buildings. The old ones only had about 8% of light getting through, and these will have 90% light getting through, so that people, the tenants will use a lot less electricity lighting their space. As you can see, Millworks is in the purple and the Central Business District is in the red, so it makes sense to expand more business opportunities to the north. This shows some of our tenants that have retail aspects to their businesses. Yellow Springs Brewery, Yellow Springs Baking Company, Tuck and Reds, and then we also have a therapist office. So we're not purely an industrial park anymore. This is an article where we were featured in the Ohio Business Magazine, talking about the improvements that we've made, the history with DeWine Seed. We've gotten some attention for our efforts.
I'd love to get a copy of that.
Okay, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for me?
So Allison, what do you imagine happening with the, when EnviroFlight leaves and you have the open spaces?
So we have some tenants that are looking to expand. They need to expand their business, and I love that we're going to be able to provide space for them to expand into. I would like to keep a lot of industrial users in the big warehouses. I'm a big fan of industrial users. They're the makers of the world. They're the supplemental businesses that our economy needs. Office space, there are a lot of office users that want to come in. I'm not looking to put in, strictly small retail shops. I'm not trying to detract from the central business district. I don't think that is the appropriate use of the space, but there are a lot of professionals in town who need, rental space, and there's not a lot of available business space in town. And warehouses can be very flexible with their use, because they can be built out to, different uses. It doesn't just have to be traditional manufacturing. Or even just storage. There are a lot of people that need storage.
Other questions? Gary, did you have some for Allison?
Well, yeah, I have a variety. I went through this, and I have a number of small questions of various sorts. But first, I want to say I even mentioned something to you once. I'm just so impressed with what you did with the parking lot.
Thank you.
It was that's a big space that really cleaned it up. And in general, I just, I live down the street, and so I see all the stuff you've done. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
So that's nice. So actually, the one thing I'm wondering about, somewhere in here, you make a comment about the properties divided with the industrial users to the north and the retail office users to the south.
Yes.
And I think that, I'm assuming that's sort of informal. There's no formal separation?
No, that's just
Yeah.
how the property is really set up, and it's really the southeast corner that is the more, publicly available tenants.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you would expand by whatever seems most convenient.
Correct.
In terms of location and space and within it. Okay. Another thing I'm wondering about, part of this all, we were talking about grandfathering in the existing buildings. So what I'm wondering is if the PUD is accepted as is or with whatever modifications, is it still possible to, if additional building or construction, or additional building is added at some point, does that require an additional request? Or is it okay within?
Well, I'll tell you, if any building that's over 5,000 square feet in the zoning code requires the conditional use hearing anyway.
Okay.
So more than likely, if she was building a building and it was over 5,000 square feet,
Right,
it would come
okay.
here. It would come to planning
Yeah,
commission.
okay. That's what I was just curious about. Was also wondering the walking path that's
Yes.
mentioned a couple times, and I've gone over it a couple times. And actually, back before you did that, I actually did attempt in the past, before you owned it, I did attempt to go
get
through
through.
there
Yeah.
once, and you couldn't do it even with a machete. It was pretty formidable. But as is, it's not a real robust path right now. It's gravel, part of it's a little bit steep, there's an area with little steps that are sort of narrow. I'm assuming this is an interim plan?
Yes, this is just a beginning path. The property line is really tight right there between
Yeah.
our building and the lumber yard. So we are waiting to see what they're going to do. They talked about doing a two-level paver patio. They talked about doing a handicap accessible ramp right there.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're going to wait so that we can make a complimentary path or whatever. If they do a ramp, maybe we'll do stairs. So this is kind of just a placeholder until.
A place, and you'll coordinate in
Right.
other words, with them.
Right.
Okay, good. That's what I was hoping and actually assuming. The other thing I just wanted to mention is the whole idea of needing a certain amount of open space. And I think somewhere in here, you make mention that, okay, so the very north part of the property
Yes.
is, you would add additional parking there. It's in some location there, mostly for the industrial customers, and some of that would remain open and to help satisfy this open space requirement.
Correct. I believe that a gravel parking lot would, does that?
Yeah, no, it's weird, okay, that's lot coverage.
Okay.
So open space has to be 15% of the overall, so I'm trying to like use GIS and evaluating it that way, and so right now, where she's at, right now today, she's fine. She's
Yeah.
got over the 15%.
Right.
If she puts in the parking lot, then we'll have to reevaluate that.
So,
And let me just say, it could be something where she doesn't use all of the 1 acre. She's using a portion of that 1 acre for the parking and then has some open space there. And she still has those other bordering lots. And then there's some green space, open space areas towards the front of the property where there's some picnic tables and things like that.
yeah.
Could also do green roofs.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. There's green roofs can substitute.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have too many flat roofs, but that's good to
Yeah.
keep in
Yeah.
mind. I'm also open to having a more leveled, like, grass field back there, where it would really just be overflow parking. People could park on the grass if needed, but it would, we do need to widen the back drive so that semis can turn out more easily. Some of the drivers can make it, some of them cannot. So,
Onto Fairfield?
right, yeah. And there are
Yes.
ditches on either side of the road. So we are going to just widen that gravel driveway. But if we need to just level it off and have it grass, and then we can keep it cut shorter. The problem now is that it's uneven. So we do have a bush hog that goes back there every 3 months, but it's uneven, and it's historically been a construction dumping ground. So there's concrete, there's metal, there's
Yeah.
wood down there. So we can always build it up and put in some grass or clover if we need to maintain that a green space.
So what I was going to suggest is that northern portion, okay, the eastern edge of that northern portion that's along the bike trail, okay, it struck me that on that northern portion, there's fencing that goes however far south of where the little, bridge is over the road. That area I think that would be strikes me as a logical place, a logical location to have some open space that would without sacrificing parking area, that you could make like a segment that goes north-south, just west of the bike trail up there, if you're looking how to apportion
Yes.
some of that.
Yeah, I agree. So that area, we planned on building a small retaining wall out of gabion cages that allows
On the very northern.
Yes, because
Sure,
there's an
yeah.
elevation difference, and I
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to encourage people to park back there and then somebody, drive
Yeah.
off the edge. So we're going to do a retaining wall at gabion cages that allows water to go through. It doesn't hold in the hydrostatic pressure.
Right.
And then that ditch right there, we're going to re-engineer with biofiltration swales, because right now there's a drainage issue back there. It's really been an area that's ignored. That little strip is currently owned by Miami Township, but they have given me permission to use it as if I own it. So, because, it's just gone,
Yeah, it needs a little.
unmaintained.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a next year's plan, but that'll be green space.
Yeah, I did, actually, I had to look up gabion,
Oh.
Stuff,
Yeah.
and there's a few around town I've seen, and
Yeah.
I assume the way they're engineered, the metal frame doesn't last forever, but they seem to last for quite a while. And I guess that's part of just how you engineer the thing for longevity.
Right.
to work that. Okay. That's all the ideas the questions and ideas I came up with, so.
Thanks.
Hey, Carmen or Scott, do you have questions for Allison?
I don't know,
No.
Okay, I just, with the mention of environmental flight leaving, Will that be completely filled by expanding businesses, or are you trying to attract somebody else to come there?
We're currently looking for new tenants. We're in discussion with a few different groups. One or possibly two of our tenants will be expanding into one or two of the warehouses. We do have a lease already for the office space for a group in town, but they have not publicly announced, so I will wait until they do. But yeah, we do have interested parties for the other warehouses. And it's nice that there's 5 buildings and I don't have to find, a giant user that wants 25,000 square feet.
Absolutely. Okay, anything else?
So for the entrance onto North Fairfield, are you going to put a sign there? Is that,
Yes.
how are you? Okay.
Yeah, I talked to Denise about it. Since it's another parcel, we can put another monument sign. So it's going to be very similar to the one that we have on Walnut. It's just going to be skinnier because we really only need 2, maybe 3 tenant slots there.
Okay.
And it does have a different address. That's 185 Yellow Springs-Fairfield Road.
There's no issues with people moving, going in and out if there's more traffic there, or is that?
On the north end, there's really not much. We do hope that our truck traffic, our semi-traffic, will start using that as an exit, though. They'll just make the main parking lot safer, honestly, for regular people who are going to the brewery if we don't have semis turning around.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Do you have any plans of ever paving that entryway?
no.
Okay.
We may pave right at the street just to make it easier for, really the trucks to come in and out. But it's flat back there, and we have the 57 gravel, which is like the really big rock, and it's stayed in place really well.
Yeah, I've ridden my motorcycle over it to go see Spencer.
Right. For gravel, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we might have to pave just that little entryway just so that, because there is a bit of a hump when you're
yeah,
going
when
back on. Right.
All right, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead then and open our public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to say anything?
Tim McLendon.
Would you come up and talk into the microphone and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Tim McLendon, my wife Pam. We are the closest neighbors, I think, to Millworks. We live at 315 North Walnut. Actually, the thing that I was going to bring up, and I don't know what can be done about it, our neighbor across the street, Janice Bishop, she seems to be the designated turnaround spot for people who are trying to find the brewery and can't. So, in any given evening, weekends more often, there are countless people that end up turning around in her driveway. That wouldn't be too bad if the visibility was good, but there's a hedge that grows there, and it's difficult to see when we go into her driveway to pick her up, go out to eat or something. It's difficult to come out of there because of the hedge. And with all those people doing it who aren't used to doing it, it seems like a bit of a hazard, and I'm wondering if there is any way, and Allison, you're the expert on this, to improve the signage or something so that people are more likely, as they come up Walnut Street, to notice, oh, there's the brewery. We've got a limitation on the size of signs, I guess, and there's things like that that cause a problem. But on behalf of Janice, I wanted to bring that up. It's probably, in addition to being a nuisance for her, it is an accident waiting to happen for people who are turning around and then can't see very well to back out onto Walnut Street.
And who has the hedge? Is that her hedge, or is that
No,
Millworks hedge?
no, because it's on the west side of Walnut Street. Who has that hedge?
Yeah.
It's where Brody's used to live. And Maria lives there now. I don't know.
I'll check into it to see if it's in the public right of way or not. If it's a private hedge, that's a different story.
Yeah, well, and,
But if not, maybe signage directions.
yeah. But at any rate, I wanted to bring, on behalf of Janice, as far as we're concerned, the uses that have been made of the Millworks property, We worried about it at times because of, we didn't want, drunken people wandering into our backyard as if, but fortunately, the brewery doesn't operate the same way as like the Gulch. And so that less likely to have those people collapsing in our backyard. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Anything you want to say in response?
I guess with the signage, I'm not sure what else we could do. We've added a directional sign up top on the light pole. There is a street light right there. Unless we can put a directional sign on the other side of the street, if that property owner would like one, I would pay for one, but I'm open to suggestions.
Get to my question. These people that are turning around, is this like traffic that's coming from town, going out of town?
North on Walnut Street.
They're going north, so they're coming out of town.
By the entrance that goes back into where the brewery is. And then they realize.
Could we get you to come back up so that the people at home can hear you? Thank you.
Sorry.
The traffic comes north on Walnut Street. They typically drive right by the entrance that goes back into where the brewery is.
Right.
And they realize at some point, oops, and so they turn into the nearest driveway. She happens to have a 2-car width driveway. And so it's a very attractive place to turn around.
Okay. Yeah, that's why because I want to make sure this is one directional issue
Yeah, if
because
they're coming from the north, they usually can figure out, because they see all the houses that are further down, and they realize, oh, that must be where I turn in.
okay.
So,
Okay, thank you. Okay, with the public hearing, any other comments? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And now discussion among the commission. Gary, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Actually, Scott, did you still have something you were wanting to mention?
I'm just trying to ascertain where, if we're going to start thinking about any other signage, where it
Yeah.
probably a good location would be.
Right.
Just want to get that information in there so the people that do this can figure it out.
It sounds to me like any signage that's going to be effective is probably going to need to be in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
And so I'll check with Johnny Burns.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I was going to mention. It would be the sort of the southwest corner of Pleasant and Walnut. That's on the southwest corner. If you simply had a sign that there's a brewery with an arrow, that might be beneficial. And odds are it would be in the right of way.
Yeah.
So,
Because I know the directions we townies give them is just, oh yeah, you just go right down there to the right. You can't miss it. Well, obviously they are.
Can't, yeah.
Okay, did commission have any questions about Denise's report about like the, in 125402, that she said that they met 4 recognizable benefits. Anything you want to discuss about that? You are in agreement? Any other questions or anything? Okay, if we don't, then I have a motion here that maybe somebody might like to make.
I can make the motion. Let's see. Finding that the application satisfies the qualifying conditions of section 1254.02 and the requirements of 1254.03, motion to recommend approval of the preliminary development plan, including the following uses: all of I-1, all of B2, and the following B1 uses: art galleries, museums, and similar cultural facilities, assembly and performance halls, community centers and senior centers, cultural buildings, and bicycle sales, rental, and repair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion about it? Okay, Judy, if you'll call the roll call.
Yes, Zaremski.
yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Osterholm.
Yes.
Green.
Yes?
Stats.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, it passes. Thank you, Allison, and thank you for your comments.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, then, do we have any old business?
Well, I do want to report on DDC real quick for you,
Okay.
because there's been some changes there.
On what?
The
DDC?
DDC, the called right now Spring Meadows Development of 90 Homes.
Yeah.
So they came for a final with Planning Commission. They did not go on for the final with council. In between that time, the way the code reads, from the time that they had the preliminary approval, which I believe was in April, they have 1 year to submit their final. They will come back with a final in April, and it will not differentiate from the final that you approved already, other than they're going to do it in 2 phases. They're going to build out one phase, the south end of it, which encompasses the lift station, and then the north area of that property they're going to then build out at a later point. They are allowed in the code to construct the improvements prior to coming to council for this final. Yeah. So that's what they want to do.
Okay.
That enables them to not have to post performance bond, and there's a lot of stuff like that. Once they, but once they do come to council with the final, then they have to come not only with the performance bond for whatever is left that they will need to construct in the infrastructure part, as well as a 4% development cost for us to be able to draw down any expenses that we're going to have, or we are going to incur from our civil engineering firm that is going to end up being the independent inspector as they build this out. So I just want to let you know, it's off the table for right now. It's not going to council until next year.
Wow.
But between now and that time, they will do the infrastructure.
Okay.
Oh, but April, does the final comes to planning commission?
Yes, in
Yeah.
April. And probably what they're going to do, at that point, there's nothing in the code that tells them between the preliminary, or between the final planning commission and the final council, there isn't like a date in there that's driving that, so they'll probably put a pin in it for a little longer as they can finish with their infrastructure, and then they'll come. Yeah. So I would expect it wouldn't come to council till maybe the fall of next year.
Okay.
I just thought of one other question relating to the PUD that we just finished in terms of just the logistics. We approved it. Does this then go to council?
It goes to council.
Yeah, so it's going to go to council. We actually put it on for December 5th. And then we're turning it around really quickly and going to come back for a final December 12th with Planning Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's in our agenda planning,
Yes,
the final.
yeah. So if you want to move to agenda planning, we've got the final
jot that
for
down.
the PUD. We have possible accessory dwelling unit. And what's my other one? Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, there's a third one. Oh, my goodness. Dave Chappelle is doing the demo of the Earth Rose building. It's just in really bad shape. And so he's going to be putting in another building. And because it's going to have residential above, it's a conditional use.
Okay.
It's not over 5,000 square feet, but it's a conditional use anyway because of the residential above. So that he'll be coming with that.
Well, it'll be a full demolition, including the very front?
Yes.
Okay.
And that really was a staff decision. I mean, they were trying to do this with keeping the facade in the front. We're like, you know, there's a lot of scary stuff about the fact that safety of that sidewalk. How are you going to do that? Keep that one structure, that one wall up, and then, so we just kind of like, no, it'd be better just to, do you really need to do that? They didn't really need to do that. I think they were just trying to be thoughtful about the design, and it just, for us, it was a safety issue.
Okay.
That's going to be a tricky demo.
Very tricky demo. In fact,
Tied in between the buildings and
oh, yeah, I
right on
mean,
the sidewalk and not much room in the
very,
back.
very tricky demo. In fact, the sewer line alone, we're like, we can't, you can't cap off that sewer line till you camera it. That was Johnny's request. And then somebody came in and tried to do something with it, and all of a sudden you get a call from Dino's Cappuccino saying, we don't have any sewer.
Yeah.
So here, things were done a different way back in the day, and somehow that was connected.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's been taken care of and remedied, but yeah, Johnny's been working on that kind of stuff too. So,
That building share a wall
Piecemeal.
with any of the other
Piecemeal.
buildings? Okay.
That's how they got stuff under budget back in the day. They just did what they got and worked with what they had.
Yeah.
Of course, things weren't as complicated as they are now.
yeah.
So I still have a further then question about, the process with the PUD, okay? And this actually would be for council. So my understanding is so essentially what planning commission does with like a PUD is we review it, and we're essentially confirming that it meets all regulatory requirements. And in some cases, you add certain, or in some cases, you add certain conditional things. And so my understanding then is if it goes to council, is there's sort of like a double check of that.
They're making a decision on your recommendation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to request is, and I'm certainly not assuming this will be the case, but based on past history, if council doesn't approve, which means that they are not following our request, that we get that the planning commission gets formal feedback on the basis of that lack of approval, so we understand, why that occurred. Okay. Is that sort of straightforward?
Well, you have a council liaison that will report back, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Carmen is alternate, so normally Gavin's at the seat, so it would be either Gavin or Carmen that would report back at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just asking because the last time there was, earlier when there was a PUD and it wasn't approved, we didn't get any feedback,
Oh, that was
In
the one.
minutes, and it's on the video, they have no requirement to.
Right, because it's a request or a recommendation.
Yeah, and it basically, the code says plan commission makes a recommendation, which is basically this motion, condensing it down to that, and then they can either approve it, deny it, or modify it.
Yeah, right. And that's why I'm mentioning this. I would like to request that there's feedback if it's not approved, just for us to better understand.
Okay.
Right, which isn't like obligatory, but it's definitely a courtcy.
Yeah, right.
But it's not a legal
Right, no,
obligation, right?
Okay.
Well, I think to Judy's point is it'll all be in the record.
Right, okay.
In the minute, and it'll be in open meeting of village council.
Okay.
And then also in the minutes.
And council is not one being. Every person sitting at that table has their own reasons for doing the things that they do, so it's not really possible for council as a body to say, here's why we did what we did.
Yeah, right.
But if you watch the meeting and you read the minutes, you should have an understanding of why
Absolutely.
different people did what they did.
And it was reported extensively in the newspaper, that, of what was said with council. So there were a number of ways to get that information.
Yeah, just don't go to open discussion.
Well, that's good advice in general.
Hey, something unrelated though, as an alumni of Yellow Springs High School, not only am I proud of our boys soccer team, our girls volleyball team did really good too this year.
Bulldogs.
And the coach was named, the conference coach of the year?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So, big shout out to them, but what a journey the boys soccer team took us on.
Wonderful, thank you.
That's great.
Nice, now, I don't want to write minutes forever, so although we can stay and talk, perhaps.
We ought to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
I know, right?